Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by a writer of novels, short stories and speeches. She won the Creative Writing New Zealand Flash Fiction competition in 2021, was shortlisted for the Exeter Short Story Prize, and in 2023 won the Primadonna Prize with the opening of her upcoming debut novel. It's Natalie Gregory. Hello.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's jump right in, as we always do with the book, your debut novel, Mother Ghost Mango Seed, which comes out on the 4th of June. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so my debut novel is about a Thai English woman called Lynn, who, after her mother dies, takes her young baby on a road trip through Thailand to find her mother's lost recipes. But realistically, not realistically, rather in a magic realist vein, she's actually trying to find her mother's ghost. So she's hoping to reconnect with her mother, with her heritage. And it sort of sets her off on a journey to see different relatives and to explore different places that her mother used to live. And what she finds instead are things that get her to question, who her mother was, all the sort of the family history that she was aware of or not aware of, where her family sits politically, and also ultimately about, questions about herself and who she is as a new mother and a motherless daughter.
Okay, there's a lot going on in there, and it's two timelines, right? It's sort of multi-generational. There's two different stories happening at different times.
Yes, so it's I don't know if I think it's more. It's technically, I suppose it's three timelines. So I've got the 1976 timeline which we sort of experience through the eyes of multiple characters who knew Lynn's mother, Nock, and particularly in the in the months approaching the Thammasat University massacre. So this was a really horrific event in 1976 where pro-democracy protesters were sort of surrounded and ultimately violently attacked by a right-wing mob. And then we've got sort of, I suppose I call this my contemporary timeline, but some of the aspects would probably point towards it being 2020. So 2020 Bangkok, where Lynn's just cremated her mother, and then she goes off and takes her baby along with her on a journey through Thailand.
Okay.
And then the third timeline is, it's sort of, I suppose, flashbacks to the couple of years preceding Nock's death and Lynn's experience of her mother's illness. Although this one I tell backwards for a particular reason, but...
Okay, interesting. So chronologically, this was, for a debut novel, this is quite the challenge you set out for yourself by having all these different timelines, all these different things going on at once.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having a chat to a friend of mine who's also a novelist, and she said, you've really done yourself in by having all of these complicated timelines. But I wanted to write magic realism because I felt that worked incredibly well for multiple reasons. And one of the things that appeals to me about magic realism is often some of the classics, especially if you think of sort of the Latin American classics of the genre, they do play with time a lot. And I think that worked incredibly well for a book that is in a lot of ways about grief, because when you're grieving the loss of a person, so a person actually dying, your concept of time does warp a lot, because you want to live so much in your memories. You don't necessarily want to live in the present, and the future seems completely unrealistic to you because you can't see that future without this person in it. So I like the idea of playing around with timelines, which is why one of the timelines is told backwards, and also connecting different parts of history together. and playing with the idea of memory and the idea of history.
Okay, yeah. And I, having read a bit about you online, this is like, in terms of Thailand, this is quite connected to like you like personally. Is that kind of the inspiration for this, was like you wanted to kind of revisit your heritage and things?
Yeah, I suppose so. I am half Thai. So my mother was Thai, and my dad's German, and I grew up in Southeast Asia. Sort of spent my teens in Thailand, in Bangkok, and I actually originally started writing a purely historical novel set in the 1970s that was sort of centered around two sisters and the Thammasat University massacre and a case of mistaken identity. And I kind of didn't get that far into that manuscript. I wrote maybe a handful of chapters. And then my mother did actually become ill and died in 2017. And it was the same time that my son had only just, I think, no, it was before he'd turned one. And so a lot of my experience of my mother's illness, you know, her diagnoses, etc., and her treatment was very closely related to my experience of giving birth and having my baby, my first baby. And sort of a year after she died, a lot of those different things were playing on my mind, and how my mother passing away made me also feel much more disconnected to my Thai roots. And so I really wanted to explore that. And fiction gave me the space and the room to breathe in order to do so.
Okay, wow. Okay, so this is really like a way of you putting a lot of your kind of personal feelings and experience into a storytelling, and kind of finding a way to reconcile with those through fiction and magical realism.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I suppose the magic realism gave me a bit of a stronger outlet for it. I'm not sure I would have achieved what I wanted to achieve through autofiction.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Gives you a bit more leeway. And I guess also you're doing, this is obviously historical. How much research did you have to do in terms of like the protest and everything that happened with that?
So I'd already done quite a lot of the research previously for originally the book that I'd set off to write before my mum passed away. So there's a brilliant book called Moments of Silence by Thongchai Winichakun, and he's actually a Thammasat University massacre survivor, and then subsequent, I think now he works as a professor in history at a university in the US. And his book is brilliant because it's not a memoir. His starting point is the massacre, but he's really much more interested in the sort of subsequent impact that the massacre and the sort of Thai government's failure to really address it in any way. So none of the perpetrators were ever brought to justice. And in fact, immediately afterwards, it was the remaining surviving students that were rounded up and thrown into prison because they were accused of committing lèse-majesté, which is a law in Thailand. It's actually the most severe law, I think, in the world in terms of protecting the monarchy. So the idea is that if you say or do anything that offends the monarchy, in Thailand, at least, you're likely to be sent to prison for 3 to 15 years. So it's quite a severe punishment for that offence. And so his book really looks into the impact of not talking about the event enough and actually not resolving, not giving people the opportunity for justice for the event. And I mean, it's something that I've always been a little curious about, because I think when I was a teenager and then during the time when there was sort of coming onto the anniversary of the massacre, there was something in the papers. And so I read a little bit about it and I asked my mother about it, and she really struggled to talk to me about it. She found it really difficult. She didn't like talking about it. I suppose that just made me even more curious. She wasn't at university at the time. She'd already graduated a couple of years beforehand. But that is the university that she went to. And, you know, she knew one of her friend's sisters, I think, was one of the students that survived by jumping into the river and swimming away. So, and then speaking to friends of mine, they had similar experiences trying to talk to their parents about the massacre. And it's just not something people are comfortable talking about in Thailand. Yeah. And it's not something that's ever been quote unquote resolved. Although, and I think that idea of resolution, is quite important, because it's so hard to move on from something and move on from a traumatic event unless you're willing to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's interesting. So you have a few sort of like almost first-hand connections to this, and then obviously, you know, reading this novel, which is a first-hand account. It sounds like you had a pretty good.
Moments of Silence isn't a novel; it's a nonfiction book. He goes through the history of the sort of 80s and 90s Thailand, and kind of charts how Thailand's current political landscape is still very much related to the sort of the structures that were in place that led to the massacre happening in the first place. Okay. And we still have quite a tumultuous, I mean, it's so strange because Thailand is the most wonderful country. I mean, it sits so deeply within my soul, and I wouldn't like, there's no reason for people not to go visit Thailand. Actually, there are so many reasons why people should go visit Thailand. But politically speaking, it's, you know, we have military coups every few years. It's not the most stable political system, and yet what maintains that system just keeps continuing because people don't have the ability to question it too deeply.
Right. Yes. We're wading into an area of politics that I'm not qualified to talk about.
No, it's okay. But it's an area of interest for me, which is what led me into this subject matter in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds fascinating. And I'm sure sort of reading the book, which will be ostensibly about the experience of the characters, that you will learn quite a lot about this anyway. Changing lanes a bit here, going back onto you and your writing. So this will be your debut novel, but you have published and placed in competitions with your short fiction. You have a short story in an anthology book, Here Are Stories. So I'm wondering, you briefly talked about how this was a slightly different story originally, but had you written any novels or wanted to write a novel before Mother Goes Mango Seed, or was this your kind of first run at doing a full long form fiction?
I mean, I've probably wanted to be a writer since I was like 5 years old or something. I still remember a friend giving me, you know, this little booklet of stickers with pictures in it, and the idea was you could take the stickers and then write a story alongside them. You know, I used to write really saccharine poetry in my preteens. I tried writing a fantasy novel when I was 14, and I think I maybe got 5 chapters in, and I think the problem I had was that I basically killed off all my protagonists before I could really get going. So I've always wanted to be a writer, but then I kind of felt forced to grow up, and I sort of put it on the back burner, and I just never had the courage to really do anything significant with it. And honestly, I think what really catapulted me and catalyzed me into going for it was my mum dying, and, you know, just that idea that life's really short and we should just do the things we love and be with the people we love.
Yeah. So, okay. So this was, obviously it was started off as historical fiction, and then it moved into the kind of multi-generational thing. But this was the first time you tried to write a full novel. Was it, having written quite a lot of short fiction, did it feel like you were exercising different muscles moving into doing a full length novel?
Oh, completely. I mean, it was so overwhelming. I thought I'd made a plan, and I'd written down, okay, where I thought the story would go. But what really was a turning point for me is a friend of mine suggested that I go on like a tutored Arvon retreat, which was amazing. And one of my tutors there, Edward Docks, gave me some of the best advice ever, which was write shit chapters. Plan your book out, literally chapter by chapter, the really basic plot points, who says what, like what happens, how are they feeling, and then just write without worrying too much about, the beauty of the words, which is something I'm definitely at fault for, because I can just lose myself in words, and I love a beautifully turned out sentence. But when you're a first time writer, I think you have to balance that kind of self-belief with the self-doubt. And the problem is, if you keep reviewing and reviewing and reviewing your prose, at least for me, I get too much self-doubt creeping in. So that was the best advice, because it just meant I allowed myself to write almost without stopping and just get through it, to have the words down and then go back and edit it. And I guess, having worked in communications for such a long time, editing other people's words, writing speeches and then editing speeches and all that sort of stuff, meant that actually editing wasn't as difficult for me in the beginning. So yeah, I think the short fiction, you don't need that same kind of stamina in a way, although really, really great short fiction writers do so much editing and do so much work. And I'm always in awe of people who write poetry, because I just can't. I can't condense a world into that few verses. And sometimes I read brilliant flash fiction and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I've read a novel, and actually it's only a page long. How did they do this? It's like sorcery. But I think I'm although I have dabbled in the short fiction in the beginning, I was never particularly good at it, I don't think. And so novels are definitely more the format that I feel comfortable in, having now written one and actually drafted my second. It's definitely the form I'm more interested in and more comfortable with.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like what many writers affectionately call the vomit draft was like a very helpful piece of like advice recommendation for you.
Oh God, that's awful. I've never heard that. I've heard Margaret Atwood calls it downhill skiing. So it's like, okay, you just need to get off the mountain.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to, from what we were talking about just then, I wanted to also ask you, before we go to the woodland cabin, you mentioned the speech writing. I'd love to know how you got into that and what it's like I've never spoken to someone who writes speeches before. So like, what is the kind of format? Like, what are you producing? Is it like something you have to turn around very quickly? How does it work?
So the speech writing I did years ago when I was working for the British Council, and I worked in a comms role, but I got the opportunity to also write speeches for the chief exec and for the chair, and then also contribute to speeches by foreign office ministers when they did events with the British Council. And I mean, process-wise, it is very different. I mean, you get a lot. So I sort of, the research that I do is, depending on what the event was and what the speech was for, I'd speak to country directors, etc., to get kind of the information about whatever it might be. It might be launching a specific policy or a program about, I don't know, global education, or like an artists' exchange or something somewhere in the world through the British Council. And I quite liked, I mean, there's a very particular structure that you can follow in terms of oratory for a speech. And you always want quite a clear conclusion and something. I always quite like the conclusion to link into the intro. But I also always try to fit in a bit of storytelling, because unless you have a sort of a sticky story, people kind of tune out. And so probably one of the speeches I was most proud of was Aung San Suu Kyi visited the UK, I can't remember what year it was now. But anyway, and I was so excited because growing up, she was sort of politically one of the few female figures in Southeast Asia that was sort of well known and was sort of quite revered for being this sort of pro-democracy figure. And I spoke to the country director, the British Council country director, quite a lot to try and get like little stories, maybe about staff in the office there, etc. And so I was able to weave in this really lovely story for the chief executive to mention before he then introduced Aung San Suu Kyi. And the first thing she said when she got on stage was in direct response to that story. So it's still about having that human connection. And finding that little nugget that people can latch onto and connect with and engage with. So it's not, at its heart, it's not that different, but of course it's a much quicker process. Yeah. I mean, if I think about Mother Goes Mango Seed, which took me sort of, I suppose the best part of 8 years to write.
Yeah.
in amongst working almost full time and raising 2 children. Speech writing was a lot quicker, but you also had a lot more cooks in the kitchen. So I'd have to review and edit with whoever the speaker was. I'd have to, patch it through if it was a collaborative event with the Foreign Office, patch it through to whoever was in charge of the speech writing on their end. And it was a much more collaborative process. But I think creatively and artistically, it's probably not too dissimilar. I don't know.
I guess the big difference would be that you have to weave in certain points that need to be hit and like talk about certain things.
Yeah.
There's less freedom in terms of going like too far away from those points.
Yeah. I mean, I can't just chuck in, a ghost that takes the shape of a naga. Can't have quite as much fun with it, but
yeah. Exactly. Okay, cool. Well, I was just really curious because it's something that I'm not that familiar with, but it's a path that I think quite a lot of writers do end up taking if they kind of depending on where they're kind of applying their skills. That brings us to the point in the episode where I ask you, Natalie, if you were snowed in at a cozy woodland cabin in the middle of nowhere, which book would you hope to have with you?
Oh, so this is so hard. And I know everybody complains about this question, but and that must really annoy you at some point. So it's like I'm caught between, do I bring something that I absolutely love and I would love to reread, or do I actually use the circumstances of being snowed in and of being cut off to read something that I've always wanted to read? So I haven't really in the last few years read that many classics, and there's still so many classics on my shelf that I haven't got around to. I mean, it's just so easy to be distracted by the shiny new things and the things that everyone's talking about. And also I know so many writers now, so it's like I want to read their work so that I can comment on it and, we can have these lovely conversations about it. But so I've never read Count of Monte Cristo, and it's actually one of my best friend's favorite books, and she's also one of my most trusted beta readers. So I'd probably use the opportunity of being snowed in to read The Count of Monte Cristo.
Okay, that's a great one. That was it is a classic. It's not one of the, when people say classics, it's not one of the ones I immediately think of, but that's a great story.
I mean, I've probably read some more of the other classics. But it's just, I've never got around to Count of Monte Cristo, and she really loves that book. So I kind of feel like I should read it one day.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have faith in her as a beta reader, then I would imagine that there's definitely some kind of alignment in what you two would both like to read. So I'm sure you'll love it as well.
And she's also very opinionated, so that helps as well.
Okay, great. That's what you want in a beta reader. No messing around, no nonsense. Awesome. That's a great addition to the thing. I think they just did a recent adaptation with Sam Claflin, I think.
Yes, yeah. So, but this is the thing. I don't want to watch it until I've read the book.
Naturally, yeah. Got to read the book first. And so sometimes you'll read the book and then be like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to see the adaptation anymore. Maybe the book did it. It satiated everything I needed.
So.
Yeah. Next up, we are going to talk a bit more about Natalie's publishing journey, what she'd been doing in the lead up to the Primadonna Prize, and then how it all happened after she won. That will be in the extended episode available at patreon.com/right-and-wrong. The launch is amazing, and that you're not too worried about it. You can remember to enjoy it.
Yes. I'll try my best.
Yeah, that's it. All you can do is try your best. It's been so great chatting with you, Natalie. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling us all about your debut novel, Mother Ghost Mango Seed, which is out June 4th. So it will be out by the time this airs. Thank you so much. It's been so fun and interesting hearing about your writing and publishing adventures.
Thank you, Jamie.
And for anyone wanting to keep up with what Natalie is doing, you can find her on Instagram at NatalieGregory_writes or on her website, nataliegregory.co.uk. To support this podcast, like, follow and subscribe, join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Natalie, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.